Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Kirk from LaneFlix Media, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about The Matrix. I'm sure you've all heard of it. From 1999, directed by the Wachowskis. I wasn't gonna do any like really big movies. I was gonna stay away from like flagship movies, but I asked my sister recently after showing her The Matrix for the first time, and she didn't like it, but she asked if I would do The Matrix for my next video review, so here we are. The opening, I will admit, the beginning of the film is... Sorry. If you're unfamiliar with The Matrix, it's a 1999 sci-fi action film that set a standard for bullet time and stylized action that is still copied today. I would say like the Underworld and the Resident Evil movies both rip off of Matrix a little bit. You could go through long lists of action films and other types of films that have tried to replicate or imitate the success of The Matrix. It had a really wide effect on, film, music, games, all kinds of different stuff. So I'm just gonna, I took notes this most recent time that I watched it, like detailed notes, more than I usually take. So I'm just gonna go through my notes, and if I jump around, I'm sorry. The opening is actually a lot cheesier than I remember. The whole thing with Trinity running from the agent at the beginning, and like that whole what's going on, and like when you're first watching it, and the first time you watch it, I don't think you notice any of the seams. I mean, maybe here and there, but the first time you watch this film, you're really just blown away at the ideas, the action, the dialogue, just the crazy stuff in it. The trailblazing stuff they did in this movie. So I will say that the action is still awesome, but there's a couple parts where you can tell that it was the first to do this because of how much detail they give you. Because when the action starts, typically it'll slow way down and then show you what's going on, give you like some kind of 360 or 180 kind of spinning shot to show you like the completion of what's going on. You can tell that it's the first because it's like, hey, look at what we're doing, like check this out. And other movies, because they're copying it, cut it quicker. So I think a lot of audiences, my sister included, are kind of used to that now. So seeing it slowed down and like more in detail is kind of like, okay, been there, done that, But not having seen The Matrix, I was, trying to explain to her, this is like a landmark. This was the movie that started that and that kind of introduced that whole idea of really stylized action. The black trench coats and the sunglasses, like all that. There's a lot of aesthetics in this that have lived on. That was really funny. Keanu Reeves has a lot of moments in this where you really can tell that he's not a great actor, but he is perfect in the right movie, and this is one of those movies, I think. But it was really funny when Morpheus calls him when he's in the office, and he says... He's telling him about like, oh, there's a wall, there's a scaffold right outside this window, and you go out here. He's like, how do you know this? And he says it in such a way that it just made me laugh. It was funny. I think it's interesting. The most recent time I watched it, and then last night when I just watched it, it's an interesting analogy of the agents in The Matrix. I think, in a way, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of different interpretations, but on the very basic level, represent. Like the agents represent the government and like the laws that anyone's government like kind of puts upon them, and then the Matrix itself is an analogy for society and the societal laws we put on each other. So I wanted to give a shout out to the production design, and I'll put the production designer's name here. It's fantastic. It's really, really great. The lived-in feel of it is another thing that has lived on like for, 20 years now it's been since The Matrix came out. So I mean, it's It's really good, and every bit of it feels lived in. Every bit of it feels like it's been around for 200 years, and nothing for the humans has improved at all. It's only gotten worse. So that whole production design is a good indicator of that. And it's cool to me that, like, I'm sure everyone that has reviewed this movie has said this, but it's cool to me that every time they're in the Matrix, there's that little kind of sickly green filter all over everything. I love that, and it's something that I don't think people will notice until like 2 or 3 times watching it, just because it is really subtle, but it is there. So, oh yeah, so this was a weird part. When they're waking Neo up, they have him in this chair in this kind of like ornate room, and right next to him is this antique mirror. And the mirror liquefies when he touches it, and then it kind of goes on to him, which of course I think reminds a lot of people of T2 with like the Mercury Man, Liquid Terminator. To me, it's like if Morpheus and his crew go around waking people up here and there, you know, because I know it's a big deal and they have to talk about it. It's usually a younger person, but does there have to be a mirror every time? Or is it like a different substance that sucks them into the Matrix? So like that part was kind of like, okay, this is weird. It's really cool to me because I can still enjoy this movie, but I do see the seams. I do get the flaws. It's not a perfect movie. There aren't a lot of there's a couple movies I would consider perfect, but this is not one of them. But thankfully, you know, I haven't watched it since I was 12 to 15, and then I rewatched it with my sister, and then I just rewatched it last night. I can still enjoy it. I mean, it's still really entertaining. The action is great. There's some awesome one-liners in it, and there's some cliche story beats that end up being satisfying just because the movie gets so weird. So I think a lot of people complain about how kind of cliche and trite the main storyline is, and I'll get a little bit more into that later. But at the end of the day, you got to think about how crazy this movie was at the time and the concepts, and to sell those concepts they needed a pretty concrete, relatable storyline to kind of like get you into that world. I go back to like King Arthur, Luke Skywalker. It's the hero's journey. It's you are the chosen one, and we're here to, you know, inject you into the revolution that's happening, into the great story and the epic saga, if you will. I would say Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving are the two best actors in this movie, and Hugo Weaving actually I don't think gets enough because he's so like boxed, like cookie cutter, you know, he's one of the agents. But Lawrence Fishburne, it was no mistake that they gave Lawrence Fishburne all the dialogue to sell you on the Matrix, you know, as an audience, and Neo as a character. The way he delivers lines, the ominous tone that he has in his voice, it's almost alien the way his voice sounds. But it's also very reassuring. It's not like a scary alien, it's like strange but good. Like, you know, it has a good force, it's a good person behind the voice. To me, it's no mistake that he sold us on the Matrix. He was the one that kind of explained the concept and broke it to Neo/us, because we're learning about all this just as Neo is. I'm a personal huge fan of Hugo Weaving. I love him as King Elrond in the Lord of the Rings Hobbit films, and I absolutely love, it's coming soon, him in V for Vendetta. I'm going to do a V for Vendetta review soon, but I'm going to do a couple other things first just to kind of keep it mixed up. But yeah, V for Vendetta is one of my favorite movies ever, I think. It might be in my top 10, but it is like so good, and he is the reason that movie works. Lawrence Fishburne, mostly the reason this movie works dramatically, but Hugo Weaving is the reason that V for Vendetta works, because Natalie Portman is like okay in it, you know, she's got some good scenes in it, but he is awesome in it. I love Hugo Weaving. He was Red Skull in the first Captain America movie. He's been a lot of stuff. He's been a lot of really small dramatic stuff too, but this is just like the big stuff that, you know, I think most people would know him from. I really dig the conversation about how when I can't remember his name. I want to say his name is Twitch, but I think it's like Squirrel or something like that. But he brings up the whole Red Lady conversation to Neo after Lawrence Fishburne explains to him the agents in the Matrix. And he's, oh, I programmed her and I created her and isn't she hot and blah, blah, blah. They start talking about the food they're eating and it's this like weird slop. It's this gross, looks like cream of wheat mixed with like they said in the movie, like runny eggs. It's really gross. And they explain what it is, but then the younger guy, the programmer, he's like, have you ever thought about like what tasty wheat actually tastes like? Because I know what I think it tasted like, but that could just be what the computers wanted me to think it tasted like. And then he brings up the fact that everything tastes like chicken, and that could just be that chicken tastes like everything because the computers didn't know how to program chicken, like how to make it taste. So to me, it's just a really interesting idea about perception, and it makes you think about like, what have I eaten that maybe doesn't taste the way I think it does, or just interesting ideas. Those are the little highlights that I like, that I think are more subtle, that are actually some of the bigger ideas and more important ideas of the Matrix. I think it's really sweet that the Oracle, this like ancient all-knowing being, is just an old lady baking cookies in the kitchen. I think that's really cool. It's a really simple and sweet idea. It's a very innocent idea. And the actress that plays her, I'll put her name here, she is awesome in it. She is another person that has to sell part of the story to you and Neo, and she kills it. She's great. It's not what you expect. She's a good actress in the scene. To me, it's one of the best parts of the whole movie. Personally, my favorite line in the whole film is "There is no spoon," because I love the scene right before he sees the Oracle where Neo sits with the little kid and the kid explains to him, the point is not to try to bend the spoon. That's impossible. The point is to understand the spoon is not there. There is no spoon. And Neo's kind of like, what? And he's like, the kid basically has to tell him, like, we're in the Matrix. This isn't real. Just know that, and it will bend, and you'll see that you yourself are bending, not the spoon. So, interesting stuff, and it works. Neo like looks at the spoon and he's got it, and it's like, it won't bend. So, yeah, to me that's my favorite line in the whole movie. The programmer, he's like, have you ever thought about like what tasty wheat actually tastes like? Because I know what I think it tasted like, but that could just be what the computers wanted me to think it tasted like. And then he brings up the fact that everything tastes like chicken, and that could just be that chicken tastes like everything because the computers didn't know how to program chicken, like how to make it taste. So to me, it's just a really interesting idea about perception, and it makes you think about like, what have I eaten that maybe doesn't taste the way I think it does, or just interesting ideas. Those are the little highlights that I like, that I think are more subtle, that are actually some of the bigger ideas and more important ideas of the Matrix. So. I think it's really sweet that the Oracle, this like ancient all-knowing being, is just an old lady baking cookies in the kitchen. I think that's really cool. It's a really simple and sweet idea. It's a very innocent idea. And the actress that plays her, I'll put her name here, she is awesome in it. She is another person that has to sell part of the story to you and Neo, and she kills it. She's great. She is not what you expect. She's a good actress in the scene. To me, it's one of the best parts of the whole movie. Personally, my favorite line in the whole film is "There is no spoon," because I love the scene right before he sees the Oracle where Neo sits with the little kid and the kid explains to him, the point is not to try to bend the spoon. That's impossible. The point is to understand the spoon is not there. There is no spoon. And Neo's kind of like, what? And he's like, the kid basically has to tell him, like, we're in the Matrix. This isn't real. Just know that, and it will bend, and you'll see that you yourself are bending, not the spoon. So, interesting stuff, and it works. Neo, like, looks at the spoon, and he's got it, and it's like, it won't bend. So, yeah, to me, that's my favorite line in the whole movie. So, because it's so subtle, and it's delivered by a kid, and the kid sells it, he's great. And yeah, to me, my personal theory about Neo being the one and all that good stuff is that Neo not believing in the Matrix and not having that kind of outsider mindset, I think, is what sets him apart and makes him the one. Like, that gives him the ability to surpass the agents, surpass the Matrix itself, and kind of become like a Jesus type character. Yeah, because the Oracle tells him, you're not the one, but once you leave here, you're not gonna be depressed about it. You'll start feeling better, because you'll remember you don't believe in any of this crap. And that line to me tells us that no, he doesn't believe in any of this crap, and he also doesn't believe he's not the one. He believes he's the one, and that belief and that willpower, I think that seed is planted by Morpheus, but then Oracle kind of brings it into the sunlight, and Neo sees who he has to become. It's kind of a paradox. This whole movie is very paradoxical, because there's a lot of stuff in it that kind of loops around. You're like, well, if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't happen, and then it's kind of like the Terminator movies. You just gotta don't think about it that much. So, oh yeah, it's interesting. So the scene where they're going up the stairs and Morpheus is about to be betrayed by Cypher, there's a scene, I call it the Black Cat deja vu scene, and Neo has deja vu, and then Trinity explains that deja vu is only when people are screwing with the Matrix, like agents are editing the Matrix or they're changing something, because deja vu doesn't really exist. Deja vu is a glitch in the Matrix. That's a crazy idea in and of itself, like, just to think about in real life, and like, holy crap, how many times have I had deja vu? How many times have these agents screwed with my life, and just thinking about that. There's a song as they're getting out of the car going into the building right before the Black Cat deja vu scene, and I think the background music is actually a similar, if not the same, song from Death Note, the anime. I thought it was crazy. I'll find the track. I'll put the name of the track here. But yeah, it kind of blew my mind, because I've watched Death Note. It's the more like moody tone one. That's just it comes in here and there whenever they're doing investigations in Death Note. It's a little like piano riff thing. I thought it was cool. I was like, damn, that's awesome that Death Note and Matrix kind of share music, if that's true. I thought it was actually really interesting that Cypher, who's like the Judas of this story, basically accidentally gives them up after like setting up that he's going to give them up anyway, or at least give up Morpheus. So I thought that was it was weird that he ended up screwing it up for everybody on accident, even though he was intending to anyway. So it was just weird. I always think it's just really tragic that Morpheus was so overpowered by the agent he couldn't even like use his skill, because just by the way he fought Neo in the first fight between them, or in any scene since then, the self-control and the power that he possesses is awesome. And it's just kind of like disappointing to see that he doesn't get to actually fight the agent the way he should be able to. I really dig that the agents never seem to bleed. They always seem to, like, their glasses will get messed up, or their hair will get a little disheveled, or their suits will get messed up. But in the first movie, I don't remember seeing any agents bleed. And I think that's just to kind of keep us from relating to them. Because Morpheus, he gets real beat up, he gets bruised, and his bloody nose, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, dang, like, you see that and you feel for that, because everyone's been, like, cut or had a bruise or something. And seeing the agents not suffering or not sustaining injury at all from the fight is like, okay, I'm not like that. That's strange to me. It's alien. So it's a cool little like subconscious thing. One of the, I think, most righteous and funny lines in the movie is when Tank gets up after you think Cypher killed him and says, "Believe it or not, you piece of shit, you're still gonna burn." And I love that. I thought that was really funny. I didn't remember it being that extreme, but it's really funny. And yeah, I kind of already touched on like the whole prophecy loophole thing. I guess that's a prophecy loophole theory of mine. But basically, I touched on it earlier. It's the whole idea that Neo doesn't believe in the prophecy, therefore he can, in a way, like ascend the prophecy, and even though technically the Oracle said he wasn't the one, that kind of makes him the one. It's really weird. I think one of the most gut-wrenching parts of the movie that people tend to ignore in reviews and stuff is Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith talking about humanity and how humanity is a virus on the Earth and among this atmosphere and this ecosystem. And the worst part is he's kind of right. The things he says are true if you look at history. If you look throughout human history, like we've just been multiplying and multiplying. So in a way, he's right. Obviously, I'm a human. I don't like hate humans or anything, but it was just a weird little feeling you get that you're like, this is a bad guy, but he's right about this. You know, I think it's actually really funny that there's a moment's hesitation whenever Agent Smith is sitting with Morpheus, and he says, "Give me a moment with him," and the two guys kind of look at each other like. And there's kind of a moment there where you think, oh, maybe and then they just like leave. So it's like, oh, okay, it doesn't mean anything really. Yeah, every time I watch The Matrix with a new person, and that shootout starts at the very end when they enter the, it's some kind of government facility or a bank or something, because they have the metal detectors and stuff. As soon as Neo puts that bag down on the little like X-ray machine, I'm like, this is the Matrix. I always say that. I don't know why. I don't even mean to sometimes. I just say it. And yeah, to me, that is the pinnacle of what the Matrix is. That whole action scene, everything about it. I know it doesn't have the bullet time and stuff like that, but when I think the Matrix, I don't think about bullet time as much. I think about that specific scene and like just the stylized action, and how this is one of the reasons that the sunglasses and leather jackets were like a theme in action movies, you know, and still are. There is one pretty fat plot hole here that whenever they're going to rescue Morpheus at the end, like this is the climax of the scene I was just talking about. They're in the helicopter, Trinity and Neo are in the helicopter flying toward the building, and Neo, I'm assuming it's a .50 caliber like Gatling gun, and he shreds this whole room and like totally annihilates the agents. And it doesn't make any sense that he didn't hit Morpheus. Morpheus was a few feet behind them, sitting down in a chair. He had no way to dodge anything, no way to avert anything. He would have had at least a dozen bullets in him. So that's a pretty big one where it's like, okay, come on, you know. But at that point in the movie, it's simply an adventure, and you know, crazy stuff like that has happened since the beginning of movies. So it's all fantasy. Yeah, there's two pretty big subversive moments in this movie to me. One is when Neo looks like he's about to catch the helicopter that's falling, the one that him and Trinity are in. It's falling down. It's on, you know, he's got the lifeline or whatever you want to call it. And he's grabbing it and like looping it around his arm. And you're like, is he about to try to catch this helicopter? And then he doesn't, which I don't know if that's what was going on in his head, because Trinity was like, screw that. And she shot the thing, grabbed the rope, and she was good to go. Very like the Mummy, Indiana Jones-esque little thing there. He gets her back, and the other subversion moment is at the end when he's chasing the Agent Smith through the building, and he finally opens the door, confronts him. He gets a couple gut shots. That whole thing goes down. And then instead of there being a big fight scene, Neo just runs and jumps into Agent Smith, and then just like he kind of expels him from himself, if that makes sense. It doesn't really, but it's an interesting ending, I think, to a movie that was full of action sequences, so it was interesting they didn't end with like an even bigger one. But I guess that's why it's still really notable, because it didn't go full like stupid action movie. It kept it kind of interesting and sci-fi by the end. So there's one more part I wanted to mention right at the end, whenever Neo is fighting Agent Smith, and he basically flexes his body, but then the space around him flexes. And every time we watch that, I watch that with my family, my dad mentions that's his favorite part. So I just wanted to add that, because it's like a little memory that's part of this movie to me, because of how many times I watched it with my family and how much I think my dad loves this movie too. So, but yeah, The Matrix is a classic. Everyone should see this movie. Regardless of how you feel about it, I think everyone has to admit it is a landmark of movies, especially American films. It's pretty freaking enjoyable. If you enjoy action, if you enjoy sci-fi, if you enjoy like dystopian 1984 type stuff, if you enjoy like kung fu movies, I think there's a little bit, it's kind of like a Tarantino where there's a little bit of everything in this. So definitely check it out. And if you guys could please follow me on Instagram, Twitter, like, comment, subscribe if you could, please. It would really mean a lot. Just tell me what you think of The Matrix. Tell me what's your experience. Do you enjoy it? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you think it's overrated? Do you think it's underrated? So yeah, hit me up. I'll put my handles here, and I'll put my handles in the description. Please follow, and thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.